You are listening to True Crime Twins, a true crime podcast hosted by Chloe and Melina Canter. True Crime Twins is produced by Crawlspace Media. Welcome back to True Crime Twins. I'm Chloe.
I'm Melina.
Thank you for listening.
Yes, today I think is going to be a very interesting episode. It's a little bit different from what we normally do.
We're talking about fugitives. This has been a subject that we've always found very interesting. Personally, I just find it fascinating to have this skill set to be able to live off the grid. It's a very mysterious circumstance. You know, they're not heroes. They're not someone that you sympathize with or someone that you root for. But nonetheless, it's interesting to imagine how someone can successfully do this and to sort of determine, you know, are they still out there? Are they deceased? And there are a couple of cases that we'd like to highlight that have really piqued our interest.
Yes. All of these people are wanted by the FBI. I think that's something that these cases have in common is that social media wasn't as prevalent. It was more like early 2000s. So I think that this made it way easier for people to drop off the map. But they're still unaccounted for. People don't know where they are.
Yeah, I think in modern society, I don't think these people would have been as successful, but the fact is that they still haven't been apprehended, which either means that they are thinking quicker or smarter, or that they're just not around anymore.
Yeah, I remember being younger and being kind of fearful of Whitey Bulger because nobody knew where he was. And a lot of people were like, he's probably dead because, you know, he's so old now. But he was smart. He had like things hidden away in like different states, like IDs and like money. And he was eventually found just like living like a quiet life in Santa Monica. And I remember that day when he was found, I was just like, wow, I can't believe that he was gone for so long. And like, I kind of thought he would never be found, but I feel like that there's hope for some of these people to be found, I hope.
Yeah, there's still a chance that justice can be served in these cases. I think it's common for people to say, oh, he's probably dead by now. But in cases like Whitey Bulger, like, you know, Osama bin Laden,
who that's another one,
who was killed. But, you know, when they did that raid, he was alive and he had been alive all of that time. So it is possible. It does happen. So, I mean, I can't even imagine what it's like to be a family member of a victim and having the person responsible out there living freely as a fugitive.
So that's another good reason for us to discuss them because it's spreading awareness as well. So the first person that we want to talk about is an FBI 10 most wanted fugitive. His name is Robert William Fisher. He is quite an unusual one. He kind of has like an army guy type look. He's very tall and has like a shaved head and like erect posture. Like I think he had back problems. He got injured somehow. So they say his posture was extremely exaggerated. Very like lordosis is the clinical term. But that's a distinguishing characteristic about him. But he piqued my interest because of just the disgustingness of what he did. The circumstances were that in 2001, this is in Scottsdale, Arizona. So Robert William Fisher is married to a woman named Mary, and they have two small kids, a boy and a girl. And they're kind of a sort of like rigid type of sort of tense atmosphere type of family. Like she was like a yes sir type of wife, and he was very kind of closed off and distant. And people said he was kind of like a cruel person.
They were a church-going family, right? You know, active members of the small community they were in.
Yes.
Or I guess.
Yes, and they had ties to the community, but I think that Robert started to sort of withdraw. He had issues from his childhood. Apparently, his parents got divorced, and that really changed him. And he, like, you know, wanted the perfect family. And I think that he was quite concerned about having this image of the family man. But things started to change. He, like, cheated on his wife. He went to a gross massage parlor and like got with a prostitute there, and maybe she found out about it, or maybe he gives me the impression of being kind of like authoritarian and kind of scary to live with, and maybe she was just like, I'm over this, and she was telling her friends that she wanted to divorce him, and I don't think that turned out very well.
I thought that he got a urinary tract infection from the sex with the prostitute.
Yes, he apparently fell ill for a couple of days. Like, yikes.
So this marriage has fallen apart and everything's kind of deteriorating for this, formerly picture perfect family. What happens next, Melina?
So I think that this obviously this whole thing has a huge degree of being planned out. He, the day before, made like a modest withdrawal from the ATM of like $280. And the next day, he probably got into an argument with his wife about the divorce. He killed her.
So why do you say they got into an argument? Did someone hear them arguing?
Yes, they did. Several hours, like a long time, like before they were found. But we'll get to that. So something happened in that house, and he kills his wife, and he kills his kids, and so it's kind of awful to think about. He slit their throats, like sort of like a savage, like hunter type thing. It's like how you kill an animal.
And he was an experienced hunter.
Yes, an avid outdoorsman. He was also a vet and knew survival skills.
Treating his wife and children like he would treat his prey.
Yes, and so he did that, and as well he shot his wife in the head after that. So it's like another one for good measure. So then he rigs a gas pipe in his house, and he lights a candle, and he splits with his dog and goes off on the run. And a couple of hours after he left, he has a great head start. The house blows up like into smithereens, and like houses are shaking from like a half-mile radius all around it. And then that's how the bodies were discovered. And the last trace of him was his car was found north of Scottsdale, like in the woods near a bunch of different Native American reservations. Most interestingly, because those are kind of very like no trespassing areas. So his car was found in the middle of the woods, and his dog was left behind. And that's it. Nobody knows where he is now. But I think that with this degree of planning, he was maybe trying to throw people off by heading north, because Arizona is close to Mexico. So I wonder. But some people theorize for some reason that he committed suicide.
So let's just back up a little. My understanding is that the place where his car was found, there are many caves that were not sufficiently explored. So I
probably because they were dangerous or something.
So I think that the suicide theory could be based on the fact that he reasonably could have gone into one of those caves, succumbed to the elements, and his remains could reasonably still be out there.
You know what I think? I think that that's the easy solution, or like the easy answer, because why wouldn't he just kill himself? Why wouldn't he just like get blown up in the house? He had a gun.
It's not unheard of for a family annihilator to commit suicide in another location.
Really?
Well, we talked about this in another episode. The current Amber Alert in Florida with the little baby,
yes,
who was a week old. The father killed the baby's mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother, and then drove hundreds of miles north and killed himself in the woods. So, I mean, people change their minds. People's thought processes develop in different ways based on many different factors. So I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility, but the whole thing seemed very meticulously planned, and that would have been a major deviation from the plan. So it's possible that the car was left there to mislead. It's interesting, too, that he would take the dog and then abandon the dog. But again, he could have just changed his mind along the way.
He saved the dog's life. Like, I guess the dog was more important or whatever.
That's not the first crime that we've heard of where someone has more compassion for the dog than their human family members.
Yeah, I think that some people have, like, more compassion for animals than humans sometimes, but, like, not to that extent.
I wonder if there's something to that. I think, obviously, people are capable of forming attachment bonds with their animals, and it's completely nonverbal. I wonder if someone that's capable of being a family annihilator, someone that's able to detach in that way, sociopath types, maybe it's easier for them to empathize in a nonverbal, non-traditional, non-human way.
A special relationship.
Like, wasn't Hitler a vegetarian?
Yes.
So,
he loved his dog.
Cool. Wow.
Yeah, that's not fun. But he's still missing. He is about 6 feet tall. He would be in his 50s now-ish, or He's actually about 60. He has brown hair and blue eyes. He could very well have no hair or gray hair, white hair. I'll include photos of all the people we talk about in the Instagram, so you can know what he looks like more.
You'll see he has one of those very typical Ted Bundy looks to him, and
like with a twist, like he kind of looks scary to me. But anyway, there's a $100,000 reward for his capture, so incentive if anybody knows who we're talking about here.
He committed a extremely heinous and unthinkable crime, and we can only speculate as to why, but it's almost like rather than have his traditional family be tarnished in a way that maybe he grew up in a really religious background,
yeah,
where nothing was worse than divorce, so he literally would rather commit a heinous violent atrocity and potentially live off the grid forever rather than have a divorce.
Yeah, some people theorize that the murder of his children were mercy killings because he didn't want them to go through what he went through. He was quite affected by this divorce, I think he talked about it with his coworkers. Which is kind of, that's interesting.
So what kind of skewed cognition is that, to think that death is better for a child than having broken up parents?
It's kind of, maybe it's like Chris Watts. I don't know. I don't see what he did really as a mercy killing, but
it's like death is better than
the alternative of facing whatever,
than something different than what they had planned.
Right. It's all about their image. It's all about what they portray and project onto the world. And with narcissists, this is everything to them. And I remember at UConn, I took a class on personality disorder specifically, and the professor said that if you make a narcissist really angry, if you threaten his image of himself, like they'll fucking kill you.
That's definitely pertinent to this discussion. And I think, another interesting thing that I've heard about narcissists is that they'll never cry for someone else. If you see a narcissist crying, they're crying for themselves. So once these narcissistic extensions of himself are, escaping from his grip, he's about to lose that. I could see that switch flipping.
Yeah, I kind of think that's what happened with OJ, but that's for another day.
If you see someone resembling Robert Fisher, please contact your local FBI office. What was the reward again, Melina?
$100,000. With these FBI fugitives, the reward is like always like minimum $100,000 because these people are really dangerous. Like, if he's alive, he's probably taking advantage of somebody, or maybe has like a wife and they have no idea who he is.
Highlighting these fugitives, I feel like John Walsh.
I love him.
He's honestly like a huge inspiration.
I think that he is so assertive and doesn't care about, coming off too passionate.
No, and his focus on Fugitives and the success of his shows.
Yeah. Speaks for itself.
It does. So at least we get to channel him a little bit. Who are we talking about next?
I think that we will talk about another 10 most wanted FBI fugitive with the name Jason Derek Brown. He was in the same sort of time period as Robert Fisher in the commission of his crime, but this guy is really kind of a different personality. He was arrogant like Robert Fisher, but he was like real showy, and he loved everybody thinking that he was like really wealthy and like well-to-do. He had fancy cars. He'd go out and was sort of like the life of the party, like looked like a beach bum surfer dude. He had like blonde highlights, and he was like decent looking. He looked like an average guy, kind of like the person we just talked about. Also, people thought that he was very nice and generous person, lots of fun. He was kind of a confidence artist, a con artist. He apparently had like a modeling agency scam, like one of those guys. But he was
like he would recruit people and say
like
that
young co-eds. Ugh. Yeah, and just like con them. So he would do things like that. He had businesses, and he would tell people that he was like a golf club importer, like an international one. And he came off well. He has his MBA. He can speak multiple languages. And I think people found him to be very credible, but he was kind of just, bullshitting. And he reminds me a lot actually of Andrew Cunanan, who killed Versace, because that was his whole thing. He loved, paying for everybody's drinks and like talking about how cultured he is and amazing, and it was very like obnoxious and cocky. So that's what comes to my mind when I think of Jason Brown.
When someone behaves that way, when someone is clearly so focused on material things, it's honestly a huge pet peeve of mine, and it really rubs me the wrong way when someone's sense of validation is so clearly rooted in the approval of complete strangers based on material things. And it's something that bugs me, but you know what? That pet peeve is clearly justified because these people are so out of it that they sometimes are murderers.
they think that certain things are more important than what's really important in life, which is like being kind to one another, not murdering one another.
Right. I mean, I'm being silly mostly, but I do think there's something to be said about someone who holds so much stake into sort of the mirror that society sees you as, and taking so much validation and sense of worth from that, and it's fragile and it's fleeting, and when it all comes crashing down, that's what leads to catastrophe with these kinds of personalities.
Yes. So this background, it really comes into what he ended up doing. So he was staking out a movie theater. He, I think, was in a desperate situation. Like what we were talking about, his image is so important to him. He wants everybody to think that he's so well off. But he was facing a lot of debt because of these businesses. He, I don't think, was as skilled or as clever as he put himself out to be. He was having issues, and I think that he felt kind of cornered. So he took a gun class, got his like permit to carry or whatever. He was staking out a movie theater. This is also in Arizona, by the way. And on the Monday after Thanksgiving weekend, so that's a big moneymaker for movie theaters, the holiday weekend, an armored car guard pulls up to this movie theater, and Jason Brown is hiding, watching, staking it out. The guardsman goes in to the movie theater, collects $56,000 in cash. When he comes out, Jason Derek Brown comes out literally before I think this guy could even blink. He shoots him 6 times, just like boom, 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 boom. Like he had no chance. It was complete execution. Took the money, ran into an alleyway where his bicycle was, this is like a weird visual for me, his bicycle was waiting for him, and he cycled off, and his bike was found like a half mile away, so I'm assuming that he had a car, like either his own car or somebody, waiting for him to leave. So that's what he did. He murdered somebody in complete cold blood, horrible, just so he could maybe maintain his lifestyle.
So this was in 2004, and he has not been seen since. The reward for information leading to his apprehension is $2,000. Have a look at his photo. He looks like Sean Penn.
Yeah, apparently there was a Sean Penn stunt devil who got arrested because they were like, that's him. I'm not even kidding. It's like crazy. He looks like he blends in. They say he could easily be your neighbor, And what's weird is that his dad's also a confidence artist and a fugitive.
I like how you say confidence artist. Why do you say it like that?
Because people don't know what con means. When people say con man or con artist, people don't know what that means. And they say con all the time, like as a verb, and they don't even know where the word comes from.
So it's your responsibility to educate the public.
I don't know. Maybe I say things that I like to say.
It's fine. I was honestly just wondering.
I think it's good because people can be like, oh yeah, that's why it's called con artist.
So does beware come from be wary
or be aware?
Which one?
I don't know.
Well, we'll figure it out, and then we'll educate the public.
Yeah, we might forget to do that because we're talking about this.
So just speaking of confidence artists, I find that breed fascinating on its own. I think, there's a lot of elements that come with it. There's lack of guilt, lack of remorse, the ability to lie, maybe even the necessity to be, a pathological liar. It's kind of a true sociopath.
I think, yeah, I think you have to be to do what he did. It was very just like, chilling.
And there's also the charisma. So, there's the sociopaths versus the psychopaths. So there's the people that are, disorganized, more on the fringes. And then there are the people that are charismatic and can kind
like
of hold up a con.
CEOs.
So I would say that he's the psychopath.
Absolutely.
Rather than the sociopath, because he was able to fool people.
Yes. And people don't think that he might be dead like they do with Robert Fisher. He was seen, I think, in 2008 by a friend of like somebody that actually knew him in Salt Lake City, where he has ties. I think he lived there. He pulled up to him at a stoplight, and he turns and looks, and then Jason Brown turns and looks, and they like mutually recognize each other. And it's like in the movie, like Jason just goes goes through the red light. So like he's around, like he's like that's a confirmed sighting. They consider that confirmed, and that's that's the last one.
So where do you think he is now?
I think he could be hidden in the Mormon religion. He was a missionary. He is in that faith.
Do you think they would accept him based on his sins?
Maybe he went somewhere else and they don't know what he did.
Right. That's
and he's
true.
just like a loner that needs help finding his way.
The churches probably don't all communicate with each other.
No, I don't think
and
so.
have his picture on bulletin board.
But also his family definitely helped him. Like there's no question about it. I think one of his siblings actually got like arrested for helping him. But I don't know what the extent is at this point. But I think that, they definitely gave him a head start at the very least. Sort of like Jesse Hollywood. He's a different killer. We'll talk about another time. But his dad totally helped him go to South America. And he was a fugitive for a long time. And, being sent money makes it easier. But, who knows? Maybe he's getting sent money.
I think that's more common. As long as the people have resources, I think you'll see that they will do the wrong thing and help people avoid justice. There was a case in Connecticut where this young guy in, I think, the town of Darien was raping younger women, and he was living in Switzerland or something for years before he was arrested and went to jail.
Yeah. And somebody was helping him probably.
It was his family. He had rich parents.
Yeah. So it's
not unheard of at all.
It's ironic because like maybe they could have helped him out of this black hole. And he has, he stole this money, but he couldn't probably like pay any of his debts off because he was too focused on being on the run. That's probably what he probably wasn't planning on ever paying those debts off. What am I talking about?
Probably not. But I do think in some cases, not all, if they don't have the skill to be able to be survivalists and to be able to be off the grid, they absolutely need the connections or the resources. And that's the difference.
Like Robert Fisher is sort of like a man of the land. Like he's like, skilled. He could probably survive. He can probably be on one of those shows. Like there's one called Alone to see how long somebody can last out in the wilderness alone. I feel like he would win that show.
He could do that. And then he
doesn't need people.
And there are other people that, depend on their savvy, their intelligence, their quick wit.
They need luxury.
And then there are others that depend on their connections and their resources. One of those people is Yaser Said.
Oh,
yeah.
This one's very, I find to be the most disturbing. Like if you compare it to the last two people we talked about.
Yaser, in the state of Texas in 2008, shot and killed his two teenage daughters, Amina and Sarah. He was a taxi cab driver and they were in his back seat when he shot them. If you listen to the 911 call that was placed by one of the girls, it is horrifically disturbing, how much they were suffering, how much fear and distress they experienced in their final moments. Melina, what happened? How did this father end up in this position where he's murdering his own children?
It's another incredibly cruel and controlling man. His nationality is Egyptian. He was born in Egypt. He was very much involved in traditional Muslim practices, but I think, to like a maybe different extent. He wanted to arrange a marriage with his 16-year-old daughter with a friend of his who was in his 40s in Egypt. Like, he's not a good guy. He married his daughter's mother when he was like 30 and she was 15. So this guy's sick. He's controlling and he's looking for vulnerable people that he can overpower.
Absolutely.
So So he sees that his daughters are rejecting his, views on life and way of living. He has this thing where, he found his wife's family to be like American trash, quote unquote. And I think he started to see his wife as American trash too. And like, I think he was hateful of, certain customs.
And it's hard to, you don't want to be critical of different cultural customs and cultural differences, but
no, it's just like his personality.
No, it seems to be a pervasive personality quality of his where he seems to think that he knows what is best, what is holy, what is right, and he feels like he has the right to impose all of those opinions as if they are fact onto the people that he's supposed to be loving towards.
Yeah, and he is kind of Mike Turney-esque. He actually would videotape his daughters all the time. Like, it's a very reminiscent, like similar video of Said. He was videotaping his daughter while she was at work. He was like zoomed in and he was like, she's smiling too much, like she's in trouble. And it was so gross and like creepy. And he was, hurting them and emotionally hurting them too, but he was also sexually abusing them. He definitely very much saw them as sexual objects, like his own kids. And it's, it's ironic because I'm pretty sure that would be against his religion and against his, customs.
It's all hypocritical. It's taking what applies to what you want and what you need. So it's funny, the comment, oh, she's smiling too much. I had a boyfriend once that was very jealous and controlling, and that was an issue that he had with me, was that he thought that I was too smiley with people. So when I hear that a father is criticizing a daughter for that, it immediately rubs me the wrong way, because no matter what, even if it's a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, it's still a little much. It's still controlling. It's
like, why is he following her around and spying on her? It's creepy as hell.
And why are you acting jealous?
Yeah,
about your daughter? It's like
he owns them. That's what he sees it as, and they're rejecting his life, his livelihood, everything he believes in, and he's abusing them and making their lives horrific. And they were planning on running away. And one day they were kind of lulled into a false sense of security. The dad was like, I'm ready to forgive you guys. I want to take you out to dinner, just us three. So he takes them in his taxi cab and ambushes them with gunfire. He kills them.
This has been described as an honor killing.
Right, because I don't fully understand those. Do you?
In I think Muslim cultures, honor killings are justified as, the victim has not been pure and they deserve to die as a result.
Yeah.
And I think that I think it can be done by the patriarch of a family or another male family member, and it's considered justified.
Yeah, but I think that he knew that in general, like maybe he found it to be an honor killing, but he still knew that what he did was still wrong. Like, he knew that he wasn't supposed to do that.
At the very least, he knew that it was illegal in the United States.
Correct. He ditches the cab and vanishes. Like, obviously he planned this, because how is there no trace of him? People actually think that he might be a taxi driver in New York City. People may have seen him at the Newark airport, and he kind of has a distinctive look. He has like a very, very thick mustache, and I think he has prominent features. I'm looking at a picture of him right now. He's tall also. He's 6'2", and he has like a medium build, but I think the distinguishing factor is definitely the mustache. But people think that he's out there, and there's a $100,000 reward out for him. So I believe that with each of these cases that there was a lot of planning involved. So this is a life that they chose for themselves. They chose to be fugitives from justice and constantly on the run instead of, facing their rightful punishment. But I put myself in those shoes, and would it even be worth it?
They made the choice when they committed their crime, when they committed their premeditated acts, that this was going to be the outcome. This was the bed that they made. Only they really know if it was all worth it in the end. I can't imagine that their quality of life is very good.
No.
Yaser is probably
anxiety. At least I would.
Yaser is probably back in Egypt. That's what the speculation has been.
Really?
So it's possible that people who have connections like that and who can, get away, especially internationally, they're not
looking over their shoulders.
They're not looking over their shoulder. They're not
sleeping with one eye open.
They're not surviving in the woods. So I think, unfortunately, out of the three people that we talked about, I think Yaser Said is probably having the easiest life. But no, I don't think that it's worth it. I don't understand being so short-sighted and so short-fused that you are willing to sacrifice
everything,
your freedom, livelihood, and basically all of your rights just to do an act born out of anger or greed that is in violation of the law and is actually one of the most serious crimes that you could possibly commit. It's just, I think it's incomprehensible and absolutely not worth it in the end.
I remember being younger. Like, I got into reading about these fugitive cases when I was really young, just like when I got into reading about missing persons cases. And I remember, thinking, oh, like, wow, it must be so interesting to be on the run. Like, I thought it was very cool almost, because I was like, how do they do it? Where are they? What are they doing? Do they have a new name? Do they look different?
I still do. I still feel that way. It's very, very interesting. And it's like I said, these people aren't heroes. They've committed atrocities, but it's almost like an anti-hero to think about, almost like a folklore kind of hero to think about someone who's able to defeat all the odds and outsmart everyone.
It's like their dream come true. They're better than everybody else. They're outsmarting them all. I just think it would be a miserable, miserable, lonely life. But we find that with fugitives, that these people have a great ability to leave their past behind. They kind of lack the feeling of nostalgia, so that makes it way easier to start something different, to do something else.
And I'm sure that they enjoy the status of being an unfound fugitive,
an outlaw.
An outlaw, a legend. I think that's what they would like, because what these three men have in common is that they're very narcissistic, and it was very malignant force in their lives. A loss of control.
That's what set it off.
So I think this new label that they now have, I'm sure they're fine with it.
Yeah, I guess it sort of makes them, powerful in a terrible way, but nevertheless powerful. But anyway, these are some crazy stories. I hope that they were fun to listen to.
If you're bored in quarantine, feel free to scroll through the FBI website, look at some fugitives, and just look out for those faces when you're out there.
And talk about them. These are engaging stories. I hope that people, like, I remember these, for many, many years now.
And we talk about how much we love John Walsh, and his show has, like we've said, has led to the apprehension of fugitives. And that is a very exciting feeling when someone that's committed a terrible act has finally been caught and they can finally face justice, and sort of feeling that relief and imagining how the victim's family must feel. So yeah, spread the word, remember their faces, and hopefully some justice can be served.